All right, so I'm here today to talk about a topic that has become really important to me, something that I've learned kind of from my own experience, and I've done some reading, and it's about human resilience. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me first. My name is Judi. I'm older and have 4 children and 8 grandkids, and we've been married a very long time to my husband over here. But my life is great right now. Love it. Challenges are not very huge right now, which is a privilege. But I was born as an illegitimate child to my mother, who was single at the time, and I never knew who my father was. I was never raised by my father, didn't know who he was till I was a teenager. I was an only child also. I only had 2 cousins. We had a very small family. 2 cousins, my mom, my grandpa, my grandma, 1 aunt, 1 uncle. My uncle and his wife were the only healthy family in our family tree. And they were like my second mom and dad, and we kind of grew up with my cousins. We had birthdays together. Well, one day it was announced that they were getting divorced. And I remember at that young age, I don't remember, maybe I was 10 or 11, thinking, that was a momentous thing. Anything can happen. If they can get divorced, anything can happen. At that point, my mom had been married several times, so I had been in several different step families. During that time of being a witness, being part of those step families, I was also a witness to and or a victim of familial, verbal, emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. I witnessed alcoholism, drug addiction, and depression in my family. My safe place was my church and my faith. There, I felt secure. I had a much larger family of faith and a long culture to seep into and to feel comfortable and to feel loved. 2 years ago, my world changed drastically with the loss of my faith and the consequent separation from my culture. I felt deep pain, sadness, depression, loss, distress. I didn't think I would ever be happy again. As time moved on, I remembered that I had already been through many hard things, and it was likely that I could and would survive. That realization, looking back at some of the things I'd gone through, was like something in my head just said, Judy, you can do this. You're going to be okay. So surviving was a choice. I could continue to allow myself to feel pain, sadness, depression, loss, and distrust, or I could overcome it. It was a choice to forgive all the people I felt had hurt me, and that brought me peace. It was a choice to find another community. New friendships were built. It was a choice to extend grace to myself and to others because we had all made mistakes, and in reality, those mistakes were not intentional. They were human error. It was seeing this on the other side of the pain that made me appreciate the growth I've experienced through every challenge. I recognized strength was built on a foundation of stress and pain. The topic is human resilience. I've been asked, when you think of resilience, what comes to your mind? What kind of visual comes to your mind? It's my husband mentioned how an X-Acto knife on a bed of wax, it self-heals, like a cutting table. It self-heals as you're cutting through it. That's a type of resilience. So we're going to talk about human resilience, and I'm pretty sure that everyone in this room has had some challenges in their life. Challenges are part of being a human. You can't get away from them. It'll never be over. There will always be something that you have to overcome, whether it's divorce, death, separation, loss of health, loss of housing, loss of income, loss of mental stability. The definition of human resilience is the ability to bounce back when you have every reason to shut down. That definition comes from Christian Moore, who is an author and an expert on human resilience, and he wrote a book called The Resilience Breakthrough. Resilience is important for a number of reasons. It enables us to develop mechanisms for protection against experiences which could be overwhelming. It helps us to maintain balance in our lives when difficult or stressful periods of time happen, and can also protect us from the development of some mental health difficulties. I mentioned the author Christian Moore, and I'm going to reference from a book that he wrote that I just mentioned, types of resilience that we as humans can develop, and I hope that you recognize if you have some of these in your own experience. One is relational resilience. That's a recognition that you are needed by others and that others need you. Your greatest power comes from human connection. And I would say the greatest human connection comes from open and authentic relationships. When you can find a group of people that you can be completely vulnerable with, I shouldn't say completely because there are limits, you can be vulnerable with, and you can say what's on your mind. You can relate on a much deeper level when you trust the people that you're with their thoughts and your doubts and your concerns and your worries, than if you're just trying to pretend that you're happy, pretend that everything's going well in your life. Because in fact, that's not the truth. So truth is important. Street resilience. You take the pain of disrespect, social inequality, and mistakes, your own and others, and use them as fuel to propel yourself forward. When your identity comes under attack, your sex, your race, your title, your religion, your education, you can feel disrespect and inequality in any of those spaces. As you develop street resilience, you find a way to use those experiences as fuels to move yourself forward. Resource resilience. You recognize that your resilience can be increased by tapping into the resources that are available to you. One of the most important resources that you have that you may not realize are your own untapped talents and capabilities. And I would guess that you don't even know you have those talents or capabilities until you're put to the test. When you have such a stressful experience, any kind of experience that draws something out of you that you didn't even know you had. And I've heard stories from people in this room that have gone through more horrific experiences than I have ever had, nor do I want to have. And I have seen how they have tapped into themselves and found a way to be resilient through those experiences. And yourself, you included, are a resource. The last resource is called rock bottom resilience. When you're at your lowest point and you believe in your ability to change your circumstances, combat helplessness, and fight on, you take control of the present, knowing that losing in the past does not equal losing in the future. So those are the 4 types of resilience that are mentioned: relational, street resilience, resource resilience, and rock bottom resilience. Early in our marriage, and I was in my early 20s because I was very young when I got married. And Kent and I were living in Seattle, and he was a student, full-time student. I was at home managing an apartment building. We had one small child, infant, and I felt myself becoming very depressed, and I was kind of crippled by anxiety and fear about life. And I realized that I had never talked to anybody about the things that I had seen or been part of as a child growing up. I had left that behind. When I left home, I shut that door, walked away, and I never wanted to open that door again. I never wanted to go back and address or think about that. I saw no point in looking back at those things, no point at all, because they were too painful. But looking back on now, I can see that choice eventually had mental health implications for me, and I really didn't even know why I was feeling so depressed. So I went to see a counselor. One good thing about the church I belonged to is they did provide some counseling if you needed it, and I surely needed it. I remember the counselor telling me that I would be surprised to know the stories of all the people that I sat with every Sunday. Not that he knew them all individually, but he had listened to enough stories to realize that everybody there who looked happy and complete and content and had all their little kids and everything all in order, that they were suffering. There was a lot of people, there were and are a lot of people around me, so I'm not alone in that. And that was helpful. I didn't really think it was very relevant because I thought, well, that's not my problem. I have problems. But it was eye-opening to know that I wasn't alone in suffering. So he advised me to read the Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And again, even reading that book, I thought, well, I'm not like him, and he's got all these experiences that I'll never have. But looking back, I can see he tapped into a lot of resilience traits in himself and his choices that he made and how he was going to live his life and go through the experiences that he had had. So it took me a long time to see a value in suffering. So I'm going to tell you some of the things I've learned. Some of these I've just learned in the last 2 years. Number 1 is listen to yourself. Number 2, trust yourself. You have a brain. It works. Use it. Listen to others who have walked through similar experiences. Share your story. Make peace. Forgive yourself and others. Decide to keep going, especially when you feel like digging a deep hole and crawling in. Find a tribe who accepts you authentically. Take the time necessary. Allow yourself to grieve, to be angry, to just allow yourself to go through those very human emotions. And I know for myself, I allowed myself a time period where I would be angry. I just let it all out, talk about it, be angry about it. And then I said, okay, that's enough. Now you need to move on. So that was something else I learned. That there was a time and a place to go through the feelings and thoughts you have. They're part of being human. And I also think there's an appropriate time to say, okay, I've done that now. Let's move forward. I want to be mentally healthy. So my call to action here is to think about your own life's experiences. Maybe you thought of some of your own resilience traits that you have, experiences you've had that have drawn out those things in you. But I also want you to remember there are so many people around you who don't have knowledge of these things. And I think my call to action is take better care of yourselves and help take better care of the people around you and help them to recognize how to tap into their own resilience factors, and also think about this group and what a resource it is for people who need support. So, thank you.
Very good. So anybody got questions, comments, things to add?